Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. First of all, let me say that I want to lend my voice. Although the statements are coming very late in the day, but certainly about any crimes against women. I think that the latest examples of the 2 killings that we had of women is outrageous, unacceptable. And there was a particular caller who I thought really accurately was able to describe what is at play here. Where we have a situation where a woman who did all the right things was sexually assaulted, complained to the police, and was prepared to testify against the persons that she thought were her assailants. And that the day before her hearing, she was so brutally murdered. And what the person brought up is what message are we sending, Mr. Speaker, to women in this country when there is not an immediate unanimous outcry, and that we can sit down and try to find a solution to how we're going to protect our women in particular who have been so unacceptably assaulted, Mr. Speaker. And the fact is that many women who already probably were fearful are even more fearful now, given the reaction that they have seen. We're talking about how much time has gone by for a minister of government to have said anything about this, to have waited now for a parliamentary session, Mr. Speaker, to come out and make those kind of... I'm not talking to me about politicizing crime. We're talking about, let us face the facts. Let's get down to the brass tacks of it. That what are women left thinking? That is what it is. It's not about what we think, it's what do you think women are feeling today. Do they feel protected? Do they feel that we are doing something to resolve the matter? When we talk about minister's statements, I would have thought that that's the minister's statement that we would have heard. Not only condemning the actions, but with some proposed solutions to the problem. I also, Mr. Speaker, want to acknowledge, sadly, the slaying of Mervyn Ferdinand in my constituency. I know that the senator is in the House, Mr. Speaker, and I know he's a relative of his, and my sympathies again to his parents, Joseph and Marilyn. Regardless of what the circumstances are, whenever you lose a son, it is always heartbreaking. And so my condolences go out to them and also to my community in Blasha. On this particular bill, Mr. Speaker, I find myself joining my members. I was very happy that the member from Vieux-Fort South would have taken the moment to explain, not to us maybe, but maybe to some of us, but to the rest of the public, the difference between what we do here in Parliament and the judiciary. We, in this House, establish laws. The Cabinet is the one that comes up with the recommendations of those laws. Here in Parliament, we're supposed to debate those laws and to make sure that we think that those laws are effective. We ought to give a lot of consideration as to whether they're constitutional, but really that's the role of the judiciary. Ultimately, the test of a law and its constitutionality will come up if a public person who finds themselves in a way of the law can make an appeal to the court as to whether it's constitutional or not. But the member from Vieux-Fort South is 100% correct. What we want and the intention of it ought to be from this House. And there should be no ambiguity in terms of what that law is saying. Now, we're confronted with a very delicate situation. This law, this act that we're speaking of, and the amendments we're proposing, are to say that a person under the age, I believe it's 12? Sorry? 12 to 18. whether that person should receive a sentence of 3 years or more, and to give the judge the ability to do so. You know, the question is, should we answer the question, is it from the time the person committed the act, or is it from the time the person is convicted? Because he may have committed the act at the age of 16, but by the time the conviction comes in, he may be 18, and then at that point may be subject to a very different set of rules. I think we need clarity. It's not to say what we're attempting to do is wrong, but I think that what the member from Vieux Fort South continues to say to us is, let us be much more specific in order to not give the discretion of the judges that may interpret it differently than how we intend. And remember, as parliamentarians here, we are representing the interest of the people from our constituency. So ultimately, the morality, the virtue of the law that we're passing here, we have a responsibility to make sure that the priorities and the values of our constituents are in it. If in fact the example that he used of hanging someone is what we believe the majority of the people in our constituency and collectively we all believe ought to be done, then there ought to be very little discretion. And the fact is, we may have to go deeper to supersede the problem that the member from Vieux Fort South has indicated, is if in fact we don't have a Privy Council anymore. And one of the arguments for going to the CCJ was that we would have judges that are maybe more akin to our culture and our values. But even in that particular case, if we do not want there to be any discretion, then we should say specifically in our law and even amend our constitution, of which you have the power to do, to support that. If that is what we believe as a people, and the 17 members of this House collectively represent 100% of the people in this country. That's our job. So, Mr. Speaker, what gives me concern in this act is young persons who have now been convicted and are now going to Bordelais. And we know that Bordelais has not been retrofitted to deal with young persons. And in particular, Mr. Speaker, their rehabilitation. So while we may think that we're doing the right thing and bringing clarity, have we really answered that fundamental question? Given what's in existence today and how long it may potentially take to resolve it, are we not doing exactly what we speak of in private? That people go to Bordelais and end up getting a degree in criminality. Not only a degree, but they create a network. And are we taking a young person that could potentially be rehabilitated, and I like to think that everybody has the potential to be rehabilitated. Are we forgetting that point? And that's very, very important. What I would like to get from the Prime Minister, the member from Castries East, is in the second part of it, we say amendment of section 81, section 81.3, sorry, 54.2 is the Principal Act. Yeah, section 81.3 of the Principal Act is amended by deleting the words section 27 and substituting the words 26. I was trying to figure that out because I think that the age of 12 was the age that we had determined, and are we now eliminating that, and what are we replacing it with? So just for the general public to appreciate what I'm speaking of, age of 12 and under, we consider in the judiciary system, I'm not a lawyer, but my understanding is that we consider a person under the age of 12 not to be of mind and cannot be charged with the full offense of a criminal act. And they must be treated differently under the law. So I'm not so sure whether we're amending the age and we're lowering it, or what exactly we're doing. It was very unclear in this document. But I would say to you that I've seen in several other countries, Mr. Speaker, and I know that we can't contemplate everything, so I appreciate what the government is doing. But when it comes to crimes of juveniles, many countries around the world are moving to where now they're amending the laws to put a certain amount of responsibility on the parents. Is that something that we want to contemplate in the future? Should a parent have more responsibility for a child under a particular age? And we're saying under the age of 12. And even if it's under the age of 18. Should a parent know whether in fact your child has an illegal firearm? Should your parent know whether in fact you're behaving strangely and you're actively participating in illegal activities? Should a parent been able to anticipate the child had the potential of committing this heinous crime? Because I think that we all can agree, Mr. Speaker, we all want to see a solution to this problem. All want to see a solution to it. And I don't think that we can legislate crime out of existence, but I think good legislation, thoughtful presentation of legislation can certainly help reduce it significantly. And to the member of Vieux Fort South, the gift that we have in this House is to make sure that the laws that we're passing, which are unambiguous and cannot be contested anywhere, are the will of the people and are things in which people will accept. So on that note, Mr. Speaker, I end my presentation. I'm hoping that I can get some clarity. I look forward to it in terms of the Section 81 that we've spoken about. But I don't envy the government. This is not an easy process. But I genuinely believe, Mr. Speaker, that we cannot make this in the absence of understanding the infrastructure that we have in place. And I think that we can all admit, if we're honest with each other, that the rehabilitation of juveniles in Bordelais is sorely lacking. And that ought to be given some consideration to some of the other observations that have been made by other colleagues here. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.